A quiet welcome to PlotFall. Tonight, we slip through a hidden door into Victorian London's East End. No grand boulevards, only narrow courts where each dawn began with the hiss of coal fires. Here, families rose not for fortune but simply to survive, navigating cramped stairs, communal water pumps, and the distant call of factory whistles. Every step carried both hunger and a quiet hope. Amid the fog and soot, ordinary lives bore extraordinary hardship, and in their steady endurance, we discover a story both stark and deeply human. Before we begin, if you find value in these stories, please take a quiet moment to like the video and subscribe. Now, settle into a comfortable position, dim the lights, or turn on a soft fan for background noise, and let's ease into tonight's tale. Feel the gentle rise and fall of your breath as we turn back the clock to the late 19th century, to a narrow, soot-darkened alley in London's East End. Imagine the early morning mist hanging heavy over cobblestones, mingling with the faint tang of coal smoke and the distant toll of church bells. This is Flower and Dean Street, once home to families whose lives were defined by cramped tenements, endless labor, and unbreakable community bonds. Tonight, we will not rush through sensational headlines or dramatic conflagrations. Instead, we'll lean close to the everyday rhythms that sustain those who awoke before dawn's first light, queuing at communal pumps for water, navigating backstairs with baskets of laundry, and listening to the lilting cries of costermongers as they hawked goods to passers-by. You will feel the chill of damp stone beneath bare feet, the warmth of candle flames flickering against peeling wallpaper, and the soft hush that fell over narrow courts when the day's labors finally ended. In this softly narrated journey, we'll explore how poverty shaped routines, how hope flickered amid adversity, and how even in the darkest shadows, moments of kindness and solidarity glowed like embers. Allow your mind to drift through the scent of boiling broth simmering on hearths, the rhythm of factory looms in the distance, and the gentle lullaby of distant church choirs. As you listen, let the past and present intertwine until all that remains is a comfortingly slow cadence, one that carries you forward, gently, toward sleep. The first pale light of dawn slips through the narrow gap between tightly pressed tenement walls, softening the black soot that clings to every brick. In the single-room flat on the third floor, thin wooden shutters rattle as a cool breeze presses damp air inside. You lie upon a lumpy mattress of straw and sackcloth, cocooned in a threadbare blanket that offers little warmth against the chill. Through the cracked window pane you hear the distant clang of a factory bell, an unhurried summons to begin another day. With a slow inhalation, feel the cold air filling your lungs. The stone floor beneath your feet is icy as you push yourself upright, rubbing your arms to wake the blood. Ever so gently, so as not to awaken the children who share this cramped space, you slip on a thin shift and step into worn slippers. A single flicker of candlelight casts elongated shadows across the soot-streaked walls, revealing faded floral wallpaper peeling at the corners. Below, in the narrow court, the soft murmur of neighbors rising in their own rooms drifts upward. The scrape of a stool, a child's stifled sigh, the whispered prayers of a weary mother. There is no turning back to sleep now, the day's chores await. Clutching a small tin pail, you descend the creaking wooden stairs, each step echoing in the hollow shaft of the stairwell. Reaching the cobblestone alley, you join the line of neighbors gathered at the communal water pump. The iron handle feels cold and reluctant under your palm as you begin to pump. With each measured stroke, clear water splashes into your bucket, the sound crisp against the hush of early morning. You pause to let droplets cling to the lip of the pail, watching them catch the weak light, then ease the bucket from its cradle. Around you, women in shawls exchange hushed greetings. Morning, Mary. Ellen, did the baby sleep at all? Their voices are gentle, shaded by fatigue, yet laced with quiet resolve. You offer a nod, a breath of solidarity, then hoist your pail and turn back toward the stairway. Back in your room, you place the pail by a small, wrought iron hearth. With battered matches, you coax a flame from damp kindling, the smoke curling upward in lazy spirals. Soon, coals glow red, and you hang a battered kettle over the embers. Listen to the water as it begins to sing, a soft, rising trill that promises warmth. You retrieve a few handfuls of coarse oatmeal from a cracked earthenware bowl and stir it into the gently boiling water. A pinch of salt, a scant spoonful of lard for richness, and the porridge thickens, giving off a faint, nutty aroma that seeps into the corners of the room. Children stir on the mattress, drawn by the scent. Their small hands reach out for spilt crumbs even as they rub sleep from their eyes. You ladle steaming porridge into tin cups, one for each child and one for yourself. As you sit on a low stool, the heat rises through the thin fabric of your shift, and you close your eyes to savor the warmth spreading from your belly to your limbs. Outside, a distant church organ begins a soft hymn, its low chords resonating through the damp air. Once breakfast is swallowed, you refill the kettle and carry it, alongside grey clothes and linen rags, down a back lane to the shared washhouse. There, a shallow stone trough lies beneath a wooden canopy. You submerge a bundle of damp garments, the cold water seeping through layers of dirt and sweat from yesterday's labor. Your knuckles whiten as you rub rough fabric against itself, each motion slow and methodical, the only rhythm you know before the factory whistle. As clothes soak, you settle onto a wooden bench to repair patches and tears. In your apron pocket rests a small tin of needles and thread, coarse, dark flax thread spun from the sacking used to carry grain. With meticulous care, you sew each stitch, guiding the needle through frayed fabric until holes vanish beneath overlapping threads. Around you, other women chat softly of market prices, of missing husbands, of children lost to scarlet fever last winter. Their words drift in the cool mist rising from the wash trough, mingling sorrow and solidarity. By mid-morning, you shoulder a heavy basket of mended linens and turn toward the distant hum of industry. Through narrow lanes slick with rain from the night before, you walk in step with laborers headed to match factories, print shops, and sweatshop. The air grows warmer, weighted with the scent of coal smoke and heated iron. Arriving at the factory gate, you pass beneath a sign proclaiming Day and Night Matches Company. Inside, shafts of grey light filter through high windows, illuminating rows of men, women, and children leaning over benches. Each child holds a matchbox between small hands, dipping the match tips into phosphorus vats, an odious, acrid scent that stings the throat. Yet your own station offers a brief respite, folding freshly glued matchboxes, tapping them into neat piles, the soft thud, thud echoing in the cavernous hall. When the foreman's bell rings, you fold your hands for a moment of rest. The din of machinery falls away, replaced by hushed conversation. They've docked 2 pence again this week, someone whispers. You exchange sympathetic looks and bite down on a crust of bread, flavored only by a smear of dripping. At the lunch whistle, you and companions file into an adjoining yard. Each holds a piece of coarse brown bread, dense, barely seasoned, and a tin mug of thin pea soup ladled from a blackened iron pot. You tip back your head to drink, feeling the lukewarm broth slide down your throat, carrying with it flecks of vegetable and bone broth. The wind carries the sharp laughter of street urchins trading knockoff toys, and for a moment you lean against the factory wall, letting the sun, weak but alive, kiss your face. As shadows lengthen, you trudge back toward Flower and Dean, laden with a small coin purse, just enough to purchase coal for the evening hearth and a pinch of tea leaves. In the alley market stalls, huddled beneath oilcloth canopies, you pick over the last of the day's produce: wilted cabbage leaves, bruised potatoes, and half-day-old fish. You select what you can afford, mindful that tomorrow's wages may be smaller still. Once home, you rekindle the hearth fire, the coals glowing amber once more. You wash the day's grime from clothing at the trough, hang it to dry across ropes threaded between rods that span the single window. Each garment flaps gently in the breeze, whispering secrets of smoky workshops and damp stone alleys. At dusk, you prepare a meager stew, chunks of root vegetables boiled until tender, seasoned with sparse salt and a shard of bacon fat. The savory aroma briefly fills the small room. As you ladle the stew into well-worn bowls, a single flickering candle casts a circle of light against the ceiling's cracked plaster. Children settle around your knees, their eyes heavy with fatigue, listening to the soft clink of spoon against bowl. When the last drop is eaten, you tuck each child into the same straw mattress, smoothing their hair with gentle hands. Outside, a solitary lamplighter makes his rounds, the hiss of gas igniting punctuating the growing hush. The song of a street singer drifts upward, an old ballad of lost love and distant lands, and you hum its final line, a lullaby passed down through every hardship-filled generation. Before closing your own eyes, you stand at the tiny window, watching the hazy glow of London's gaslights mingle with the rising fog. You whisper a prayer of thanks for today's small mercies, a loaf baked without mold, a full stomach for your children, and arms strong enough to face tomorrow. As dawn's first grey light begins to wane over Flower and Dean Street once more, let us draw close to one family whose walls have borne witness to both sorrow and steadfast hope across 3 generations. In a ground-floor tenement flat, the Ormond household stirs. Grandmother Bridget, her daughter Mary, and little Edward share the same cramped space. Together, they carry stories of famine, factory smoke, and the unbreakable bonds that make survival possible. Grandmother Bridget is the first to rise. Though her hair is white and her frame bent, her eyes hold the fierce flicker of someone who has endured far worse. As you listen, imagine her soft, measured steps across creaking boards, the scent of peat smoke clinging to her boots. Bridget was born in County Mayo in the 1840s, when the potato blight arrived like a silent thief, stealing the only food the family knew. In her cracked but steady voice, she recalls dawn fog over flooded fields, the hollow tang of boiled nettles when potatoes failed. Listen to the rhythm of her words. I'd wake before first light, shake the dew from my skirts, and trudge along dung-streaked lanes with pail in hand, seeking turnips to boil when potatoes rotted in the earth. Mothers wept beside me, their arms heavy with children too weak to stand. Some days would taste nothing but air and fear. She pauses, smoothing the threadbare shawl about her shoulders. Yet even in memory's ache, there is compassion. She speaks of neighbors sharing a crust of sodden bread, of furtive handmeets and offers of water, of secret prayers uttered beneath shackled breath. Those early years taught her that community could be both refuge and lifeline. By mid-morning, Bridget hands young Mary a tin cup of weak tea, its steam rising in a pale swirl. Mary, now 25, steps out into the alley with a basket at her side, on her way to the match factory where she works 12 hours every day. As you follow her, feel the scrape of her leather shoes on uneven stone, the weight of the basket a constant reminder of her responsibilities. Inside the factory, the air is thick with the stinging scent of phosphorus. Rows of women and children stand shoulder to shoulder, dipping match tips, rotating boards, aligning boxes. Mary's hands move in practiced rhythm. Dip, wait, turn, dip, wait, turn. Each movement is deliberate, almost meditative, yet the poison in the air settles in her lungs and seeps through her skin. You sense the ache in her shoulders at day's end, the dull throbbing behind her eyes. During the brief midday pause, Mary sits on a rough wooden crate in the yard, tearing into a piece of coarse bread. She watches the sky, smudged grey, and allows herself a moment's respite, recalling her mother's gentle hymn humming through firelight last night. That soft melody steadies her heart, reminding her that even in toil, love endures. Young Edward, at just 10 years old, shouldering a satchel far too large for his frame, is meant to attend the local pauper school. But his feet carry him instead to the edge of a scuffle, a small crowd of boys, aroused by talk of Parliament's proposed amendment to child labour laws. They jeer and jostle in the schoolyard, hurling scraps of paper with slogans like "Save our hours" and "Children are not machines." Edward, caught between curiosity and fear, clutches his satchel as a marble whizzes past. He treads carefully around the ring of bodies until he spots his teacher, Miss Collingwood, calling calm. "Edward, come inside." Lessons begin. Inside the drab classroom, warmed only by a single coal stove, Edward settles at his desk. As you imagine his small hand raising an eager question, "Miss, will I ever read my own story?" you feel the gentle hush that falls over the room. Though his home offers little in the way of books, Edward dreams of words bringing him worlds beyond soot and hardship. His teacher's kind smile, the scratch of chalk on slate, and the faint scent of linseed oil on wooden desks become touchstones of hope. By evening, Bridget, Mary, and Edward gather around a battered table strewn with mismatched bowls. Grandmother ladles a simple stew of turnips, barley, and occasional bacon fat, drawn from last week's scrap of meat. The candle flame trembles in the draught from the single window. Its glow paints their faces in soft amber. As they eat, Bridget recounts tales of Ireland's rolling green hills. Mary recounts a factory scrap, a foreman's misdeed, or a co-worker's kindness. Edward reads aloud a stanza from a primer. The sun doth shine, the rain doth fall, their voices overlap in gentle harmony, weaving past and present into a shared narrative. You feel the warmth in that circle, a tangible force stronger than the day's cold. In these moments of solidarity, hardship is tempered by laughter, Mary's soft giggle at Edward's clumsy pronunciation, Bridget's quiet chuckle at a childhood memory. Each smile is a breath of resilience, each shared word a stitch in the fabric that binds them together. As night deepens, Edward drifts off beside his mother's shoulder, his soft breathing rising and falling like a lullaby. Mary murmurs a prayer of thanks for his safe return from the day's dangers. Bridget leans back in her chair, cradling a scrap of faded cloth, once part of her wedding gown, remembering that even in loss, something precious remains. Here, in this small tenement, the Ormonds find sanctuary, not in walls of brick, but in the unbroken chain of memory, love, and shared struggle. Their story, though born of despair, blossoms in moments of grace, the quiet offering of water, the shared crust of bread, the comfort of an evening hymn. As the city above continues its restless hum, let us slip beneath the cobblestones and into the silent earth, where layers of history lie waiting. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine yourself on a damp spring morning at Bunhill Fields, once a pauper's burial ground in London's East End. The scent of damp soil mingles with early blossoms of wild mustard. A thin mist clings to low stone markers, many worn smooth by time, their once sharp inscriptions now barely visible. Under the careful guidance of an archaeologist, you kneel beside a rectangular trench cut into the clay-rich earth. Your gloved fingers grasp a small trowel as you gently remove soft layers of silt. Each pass reveals flecks of brick, fragments of plaster, and, in time, the edges of a rough wooden coffin. Above you, seagulls wheel and cry, their calls distant and inscrutable, reminders that, above ground, life presses on, unaware of these hidden stories. With a soft brush, you clear away the last of the soil to expose a jagged row of human bones, a skull tipped slightly forward, rib fragments fanning outward like broken wings. Nearby, you uncover personal effects, a rusted tin cup, its rim crushed, a single clay tobacco pipe, stem snapped, and a handful of ceramic shards from a coarse earthenware bowl. Feel the hush that falls as you lay each artifact on soft cloth, the gentle clink of pottery against stone, whispering of meals eaten in haste, of moments of quiet reprieve. Alongside physical remains, the dig reveals folded sheets of printed paper, fragments of a Victorian medical directory. Opening the brittle pages, you read recommended remedies for cholera, a teaspoon of camphor dissolved in spirits, and advertisements for patent medicines promising to cure consumption and dropsy with strange elixirs distilled from turpentine oak. The ink, though faded, still smudges between your fingertips, a tactile link to Sundays spent poring over affordable pamphlets by candlelight. As you study the tiny print, imagine the anxious reader, perhaps a mother with a feverish child, or a laborer aching from factory fumes, clutching these pages in the hope of relief. The directory's antiseptic illustrations of lungs and bowels contrast starkly with the broken pottery and skeletal remains outside, reminding us of the fragile boundary between life and death in the slum. Beneath a layer of dark humus, you uncover thousands of pottery fragments, each bearing the scrawl of a maker's stamp or the faint glaze of once vibrant color. Among these shards, patterns emerge, thick-walled bowls stamped T. Shepherd and Company, cheaply produced in Staffordshire, chipped teacup handles, likely prized possessions passed down despite cracks, and blackened base fragments of chamber pots, silent witnesses to daily indignities. You piece together a small bowl, the glaze revealing a faded floral motif. Holding it, you sense how a family might have treasured its pretty pattern, how they collected water in it, spooned gruel, washed small hands. Nearby, you find repurposed glass fragments, snippets of broken medicine bottles used as makeshift cutting implements or in rudimentary lanterns. Even in destitution, resourcefulness blooms. Pipe stems refashioned into hairpins, iron nails bent into simple hooks, and bone fragments ground for fertilizer in the meager window boxes that brighten tenement doorways. A little farther down the trench, you encounter an unmarked mass grave, a communal pit where the poorest of the poor were laid to rest during cholera outbreaks. Here, bodies were interred without coffins, laid one atop another in haste. The air is cool and still as you hover above this solemn space. Each exhalation seems too loud, too irreverent. You step back, recalling that above this same ground once stood wooden boards where ministers delivered fervent sermons to heedless crowds, urging repentance in the face of death. Imagine those preachers. Their voices carried on wind that also bore cries of children and the trampling of boots. Their words promised salvation, yet could offer no cure for the fever that stole life with merciless speed. The ground here is soaked not just with earth, but with the collective grief of thousands whose names were never etched in stone. Beyond bones and pottery, the dig uncovers paper fragments of street ballads, handbills hawked by criers in markets, lyrics printed in bold type. Oh, weary traveler, heed this rhyme. No food today, no chance, no time. The queasy heart and aching head, all sold their souls for daily bread. These ballads, though tattered, speak of humor and defiance, a reminder that even in despair the human spirit seeks to sing. Nearby you find snippets of a poll book, listing names eligible to vote after the 1867 Reform Act, some residents now bearing the right to shape laws that govern their lives, however limited. These scraps of paper, one mournful, one hopeful, lie side by side in the dirt, a testament to the complexity of slum culture, marked by suffering, yet stirred by aspiration. As you lift each artifact from its resting place, feel the weight of history settling on your shoulders. The broken cup, the discarded pamphlet, the unmarked grave, all speak in quiet voices of struggle, resilience, and community. Beneath our feet, the slum's forgotten dead rest in a tapestry woven from fragments of daily life. The tools they used, the remedies they trusted, the verses they sang. Allow these images to wash over you, the soft brush of soil against leather shoes, the faint scent of musty paper, the hush that falls when you lay down your trowel. In this subterranean stillness, we glimpse not just the end of lives, but their enduring echoes, the small comforts they carried, the kindnesses shared, the laughter that slipped between factory whistles. Chapter 4. Beyond the Alleys, Contrasts of Privilege and Shared Vulnerability. As the city's gaslights flicker to life and a soft fog drifts through narrow courts, let us lift our gaze from Flower and Dean Street's shadowed lanes to the grand thoroughfares not far away, where carriages clatter past polished townhouses and the wealth of empire glitters in gilded windows. Tonight, we'll explore how the rhythms of privilege and poverty ran parallel courses, often separated by only a few blocks of cobblestone, yet bound together by the same human fragility. Imagine the soft chime of an imported mantel clock in a Mayfair townhouse. It sounds clear and unhurried. In a spacious drawing room, sunlight streams through lace-curtained windows, illuminating parquet floors polished to a mirror's gleam. A maid in crisp livery carries in a silver tray china cups of fragrant tea, buttered toast on bone plates, and a delicate vase of freshly cut roses. You settle into a cushioned chair upholstered in velvet, feeling the smooth damask cushion yield beneath you. A bell summons the governess, who arrives to guide the children through their French lesson. The air here is warm, perfumed with rosewater and beeswax polish. Conversation is gentle, refined. "Madeline, please repeat the passe compose," intoned in soft tones. Every movement is deliberate, every object curated to convey refinement and ease. Throughout the day, you witness a parade of servants. The butler arranging letters and newspapers on a mahogany desk, the cook overseeing the preparation of consommé and roast beef in a gleaming copper range, the footman ensuring each guest's glove, hat, and umbrella stand at ready. This household's operations are as finely tuned as any factory mechanism, but with far gentler consequences. When a vase tips and shatters, it is replaced without question. When a carriage wheel breaks, a coachman and stable hands work swiftly to restore motion. Yet beneath the calm surface lies its own pressures. Social expectations demand flawless comportment. A single misstep at a society ball could ripple across reputations. Family fortunes hinge on advantageous marriages. Fortunes built on colonial trade expose the fragility of human lives half a world away. Even privilege, as you hear whispered in hushed parlors, carries the burden of sustaining appearances. Let us not forget that London's perils did not confine themselves to the poor. Cholera traveled down grand boulevards as relentlessly as it crept through courts. When the Great Fire of Pudding Lane in 1871 flared to life, ignited by a stray spark in a bakery, its smoky tendrils curled around both thatch and slate roofs alike. Wealthy homeowners watched from their windows as crews battled flames, the acrid smoke staining their handkerchiefs. Economic downturns, bank failures or crop failures abroad, sent ripples through all classes. In winter months, carriages gave way to foot when owners found stables too costly, and drawing rooms grew chilled as coal prices spiked. In these moments, the separation between slum and townhouse blurred. Hunger, cold, and uncertainty are equal opportunity assailants. Between the opulence of Mayfair and the squalor of Flower and Dean, a sprawling network of artisans and shopkeepers linked both worlds. Picture a cobbler's stall on Whitechapel Road, its proprietor hammering supple leather into boots for both factory foremen and estate grooms. Across the way, a haberdasher sells ribbons destined for coarse bonnets and silken trimmings alike. In narrow back rooms, printers churn out both cheap pamphlets for slum readers and elegant invitations for society soirees. In marketplaces, costermongers' cries, "Fresh strawberries," echo through lanes that blend patrons of every rank. Here, commerce becomes a leveling force. The same produce feeds paupers and peers, the same crafts sustain poor and privileged households. As our journey through Victorian London draws to a close, reflect on the tapestry we've woven. In Flower and Dean Street's damp tenements, daily life was a series of narrow escapes from hunger, disease, and despair, but also a testament to community, to 3 generations holding fast through shared hardship. In Mayfair's gilded rooms, ease and refinement masked pressures of reputation, financial uncertainty, and the quiet ache of expectation. Yet across all these worlds, slum, townhouse, workshop, humans shared laughter, sorrow, and the longing for something better. A mother's lullaby soothed children of every class. A whispered prayer sought comfort from the same unseen sky. A single carriage wheel and a broken shoe both required mending in dimly lit workrooms. The boundaries of privilege could shift overnight, and the common threats of fire, illness, and economic upheaval spared no one. The dawn breaks cold and gray, but today's first light reveals more than damp brick. It highlights the whitewashed walls of a new public infirmary on Whitechapel Road. Imagine yourself stepping inside. The air is sharp with the scent of antiseptic and boiled linen. Rows of iron bedsteads line the hall, each occupied by someone weakened by cholera or typhus. Nurses in starched aprons move quietly, adjusting clean bandages, offering cups of weak barley water. Outside, public health inspectors wheel handcarts of lime to sprinkle along gutters, their coarse boots echoing against stone. They knock on tenement doors, advising families to cover water barrels and repair leaky privies. In small alleys, you hear the metallic scrape of horse-drawn night soil carts as workers remove waste under lantern light, a grim but vital chore. At the public washhouse, chartered in 1870, you find long benches and heated water troughs, an innovation to reduce scabies and ringworm. Families queue for turns, soap suds glittering on flour-dusted garments. With each scrub and rinse, hope rises that disease might yield to cleanliness. Yet even here, whispered fears persist. Did you hear of Mrs. Clark's fever? They say the doctor's wards are full again. In this chapter, we trace the slow establishment of SORs, the upheaval of slum clearance schemes, and the unsettling question of whether progress can outpace poverty. Each brick laid, each barrel cleaned, each patient tended is a step toward a healthier tomorrow, yet the road remains long and winding. Turn now to a crowded lecture hall in Hoxton on a misty afternoon, its gas lamps burning brightly against damp windows. You are among a gathering of working-class men and women, tailors, dock workers, laundresses, drawn by the promise of education and solidarity. At the front stands a mild-mannered figure in a dark frock coat, a social reformer from the charity organization Society. His voice is calm and earnest as he outlines plans for orphanages, night schools, and penny banks to help families save for emergencies. Feel the pulse of cautious optimism as attendees lean forward. A woman clutching a sewing basket imagines sending her daughter to evening classes. A laborer nods at the prospect of cooperative housing. An elderly porter wonders if pension clubs might ease his final years. After the lecture, small groups cluster in corners, exchanging pamphlets that promise everything from temperance to workplace arbitration. Later, in a dim back room above a pub, you glimpse the East End's first workers' library, shelves of donated volumes offering lessons in arithmetic, Shakespeare, and mechanics. By oil lamp, men trade pages on factory safety and women pore over tracts on women's suffrage. Each borrowed book is a beacon, each discussion a spark of change. This chapter traces the emergence of friendly societies, trade unions, and philanthropic networks, blended forces that, over decades, chipped away at the hardest edges of deprivation. Through quiet meetings and modest acts of charity, a new communal promise took hold, that those who lived in the shadows might one day step into the light. As evening falls, follow the swell of footsteps heading toward a flickering facade on Whitechapel High Street, the Empire Music Hall. Inside, the air is warm, thick with tobacco smoke and the tang of spilled beer. Rows of painted benches fill with men in flat caps and women in shawls, eyes bright with anticipation. On stage, a diminutive comedian in a tuxedo begins to strum a tinny ukulele, launching into a cheerful ballad about Dear Annie's new bonnet. Notice how the crowd leans in at each punchline, their laughter rippling like waves. Between acts you hear the clatter of beer mugs and the rustle of programs advertising acrobats, animal acts, and sentimental songs. A brass band strikes up a waltz in the gallery, couples surge onto a narrow dance floor. Moments of levity bloom amid hardship, an antidote to factory whistles and midnight funerals. Outside, street performers tap tin cans and jingle tambourines, earning a few pennies from passers-by. Corner singers belt out moralizing ditties, "Oh, Johnny, won't you mend your ways?" While puppeteers' wooden figures enact tales of love and betrayal. Even in the bleakest courts, these small spectacles bring color, connection, and a taste of escapism. This chapter unfolds how popular culture, music hall, penny gaffes, street literature, wove itself into daily life, offering shared laughter, shared sorrow, and a sense that, for a brief moment, everyone belonged to the same grand, unruly show. In the pale dawn, cross the threshold of Christ Church Greyfriars or a humble Wesleyan chapel in Spitalfields. The air here holds incense of coal fires and polished wood, mingled with the faint perfume of lilies by the altar. Congregants file in, dock workers in caps, seamstresses in modest bonnets, each pausing to kneel beneath stained glass windows depicting saints and angels. The minister's voice rises, calm and measured, weaving biblical passages that speak of mercy, charity, and hope beyond the grave. Hymns, "Abide with Me" and "Rock of Ages," rise in gentle harmony, voices quivering with devotion. Notice the soft glow in a mother's eyes as she holds her child, the stoic comfort on an old man's face as he clutches a well-worn prayer book. Beyond Sundays, faith shapes everyday rituals, blessings shared before meager meals, improvised shrines painted by hand on tenement walls, whispered prayers at the sight of a newborn in a battered cradle. Faith healers ply their trade with poultices and holy water, street preachers stir crowds with fervent calls for repentance. Yet the chapter also reflects on divisive faiths, the friction between staunch Anglicans and rising nonconformists, between Jewish immigrants and Christian neighbors, each community finding solace, and sometimes tension, in their rituals. Through it all, belief endures as a balm for hearts burdened by poverty, sickness, and loss. Our new chapter opens in a modest, ragged school on Great Ailey Street, sunlight filtering through grimy windows onto rows of wooden desks. A dedicated teacher, Miss Hawthorne, calls the roll, then guides eager faces through chalk-dusted lessons in grammar, arithmetic, and geography. Feel the hopeful hush as each child recites verses of Dickens or calculates sums on slate boards. Meanwhile, in a nearby mission hall, adult evening classes convene. A group of men pore over primers in the newly minted Mechanics Institute library, studying engineering diagrams, railway timetables, and basic chemistry. Women gather for lectures on hygiene and domestic economy, learning to stretch meager rations and care for sick family members. For some, these lessons ignite sparks of ambition. A boy dreams of becoming a clerk with a stable wage. A laundress imagines opening a small dressmaking shop. A former dock worker plots to organize his fellows for better pay. Each accomplishment, passing a spelling test, mastering a trade, feeds a quiet revolution of self-belief. This chapter traces the spread of compulsory education after the 1870 Elementary Education Act, the rise of technical schools, and the fervent belief that knowledge, once locked behind privilege, could become the key to social mobility. In dusty classrooms and solemn lecture halls, the seeds of tomorrow's possibilities were sown. As gaslight wanes and the factory whistle blows once more, picture the weary procession of workers leaving match factories and print shops under a canopy of low clouds. Their footsteps echo on damp cobbles as they trudge toward home. Feel the ache in muscles stiff from heavy looms and bent backs, the dull throb behind eyes glazed with fatigue. Some turn toward taverns where hearty stews and cheap ale await, small comforts against the night's chill. Soft laughter drifts from wooden benches, punctuated by the clink of pewter mugs. Others hurry home, careful not to wake sleeping children. In candlelit tenements, they stoke the hearth's last embers, pile on thin quilts, and draw blankets close. A final cup of chamomile tea warms their hands and soothes their breathing. In this chapter, we linger on the transition from labor's demands to the quiet promise of rest, on the little rituals that mark day's end, washing soot from faces, brushing tangled hair, whispering bedtime prayers. Though the night brings its own risks, ghost stories, muggings, cold drafts, each household claims a small victory in finding warmth, solitude, and the peace of closing eyes. Imagine standing at the river's edge just before dawn, rosy light chasing away the night fog. The Thames flows dark and steady, carrying the city's refuse, its commerce, and its secrets. Small barges drift past, laden with coal, grain, and immigrant hopes. Fishermen cast nets from rickety wherries, the plash of water a hushed counterpoint to distant church bells. Along the embankment, warehouses stand like silent sentinels, brick and iron facades still glistening from last night's rain. Dock workers yoke great sacks of merchandise onto horses and carts, their breath drifting in white clouds. You smell salt on the air, mixed with coal smoke and the faint tang of fish. This chapter explores the river as a living artery, how tides shaped industry, how cholera outbreaks followed polluted currents, how watermen ferried both goods and stories. We pause at street pubs overlooking the water, smoke swirling above turf-covered floors, where sailors' ballads and rumour mingle. In the Thames's ceaseless flow, we find both the city's lifeblood and the story of every hand that laboured to keep London afloat. Through a narrow, twisting alley in Whitechapel, gas lamps sputter above ragged doorways. Here lies the notorious rookeries, labyrinthine courts where shadows gather and destinations blur. Listen for the furtive footfall of pickpockets, the quiet scuffle of illicit trades behind papered windows, and the low murmur of conspiratorial whispers. Patrols of bobbies, blue-coated constables with polished helmets, walk their beats, lanterns in hand, boots clicking. They stop to question vagrants, to inspect unlicensed lodging houses, to break up drunken brawls. Their presence is as much moral beacon as law enforcement, each holstered truncheon a reminder that order, though tenuous, still holds. This chapter unpacks the rise of modern policing after the 1829 Metropolitan Act, the struggle to curb vice and violence in overcrowded slums, and the uneasy alliances between watchmen, journalists, and reformers. Yet even here, amid crime's underbelly, we find acts of kindness, an officer sharing bread with a night shelter resident, a surgeon treating a knife wound without asking questions. In the rookery's gloom, humanity flickers between danger and compassion. Step into a narrow courtyard at mid-afternoon, where a cluster of ragged children gather beneath a single elm tree. Their faces are smudged, their clothes patched and faded, yet their eyes shine with ingenuity. One boy has carved a small wooden hoop from driftwood, another knits the hoop along the ground with a sharpened stick. Laughter rings out as they chase each other, their bare knees scraping against rough stone. Girls skip rope with frayed cords, whispering rhymes learned from street ballads. A cluster huddles around a tin can puppet show, crudely painted figures dancing for an audience of peers. In these games, stick and hoop, marbles, hula hoop, you sense both innocence and the practice of survival, cooperation, quick thinking, the thrill of small victory. This chapter honors the world of childhood that persisted despite school absences, factory shifts, and cramped quarters. In these fleeting moments of play, we glimpse resilience's sweetest facets, creativity born of scarcity, community forged in shared laughter, and the possibility of wonder even in shadowed courts. Now picture Christmas Eve approaching on a frosty December evening. In wealthier homes, holly boughs festoon parlor mantels, and warmed port fills crystal glasses. But in tight tenements, families gather small sprigs of evergreen from hedgerows, binding them with twine to fashion a simple wreath. A single candle in the window promises goodwill to neighbors. On the holiday itself, stew is enriched with leftover bones and marrow, luxuries rare in midwinter. Children wake to homemade toys, wooden tops whittled by a father's hand, a knitted mitten stuffed with scraps of cloth. Their laughter spills into the street, joined by distant carolers whose voices drift through frosty air. As winter deepens, snow muffles city noise and cloaks soot in soft white. Ice crystals form on windows, tracing delicate patterns. Families huddle around hearths for warmth. Fish and chips vendors peddle hot food to shivering crowds. The cold presses danger, frozen pipes, slippery steps, and illnesses that huddle in doorways, but it also brings shared closeness, communal fires, and the comfort of blankets passed between arms. This chapter weaves the cycle of seasons: festive light, spring's renewal, summer's haze, autumn's retreat, and shows how each shift reshaped daily life, changing work rhythms, altering diets, and offering brief respites or fresh trials. In the ebb and flow of weather, Victorians found both challenge and consolation. In the pale glow of dawn, raise your eyes to the horizon where iron smoke stacks punctuate the sky, ever more numerous as factories rise like sentinels of progress. From your vantage on a modest rooftop terrace in Bermondsey, you watch a steady plume of coal-dusted vapor swirl into low clouds. Below, bricklayers lay courses of new walls, their trowels tracing horizontal lines that echo the river's flow. Feel the pulse of hammers striking metal and the muted roar of steam engines awakening to the day's labor. In the narrow lanes, children pause in their games to gape at crane arms swinging into position, hauling girders for a sugar refinery. The air is warm with the tang of molten iron and the faint sweetness of kiln-fired bricks. Yet through the haze, glimmers of sky peak, pale blue reminders that nature endures beyond steel and soot. This chapter traces how London's silhouette transformed, spires of cathedrals standing alongside girders of warehouses, lofty chimneys competing with church towers, and new railway bridges arching over ancient streets. In this juxtaposition of old and new, Victorians grappled with hope and unease, marveling at human ingenuity even as they wondered what the sky would remember once the work never ceased. Stroll along Jubilee Street at mid-morning, and you'll sense the human tide flowing from docks to doorways. Immigrants from Ireland, Eastern Europe, and the Caribbean converge here, each bearing memories of distant homelands like spices clinging to coats. Smells of frying codfish, pickled herring, and fresh-baked challah mingle under shop awnings, creating a kaleidoscope of scents. Step into a small grocer's shop where a Polish proprietor wraps sausages in brown paper while exchanging a few words of Yiddish with a customer. Beyond him, a Jamaican vendor sells plantains from a wooden stall, her accent lilting and warm. Over on the corner, an Irish street preacher's hymns join the calls of a Greek reading room inviting newcomers to free language lessons in exchange for a penny. In this chapter, we explore how successive waves of immigrants wove their customs into London's fabric, the soft notes of accordion music drifting from back rooms, the aromatic swirl of varied cuisines, the sharing of folk tales beneath gas lamps. Each culture brought both difference and kinship, forging a mosaic of tongues, tastes, and traditions that transformed the city into a global crossroads. Enter a dimly lit coffee house near Fleet Street, where dense tables of journalists, lawyers, and students gather around chipped marble-top tables. The rich perfume of dark roast coffee blends with paper and ink. Candles gutter in brass holders as patrons pore over broadsheets and pamphlets, debating parliamentary reforms and colonial debates in low but insistent tones. A young newspaperman dips his pen into a well of ink, his quill scratching headlines about a miners' strike in County Durham. Nearby, a barrister leafs through a legal gazette, its pages spread against the hushed clatter of cups and saucers. On a raised platform, A lecturer from the Society of Arts expounds on electrical lighting, his measured voice weaving visions of illuminated streets and safer factories. This chapter savors the quiet intellectual fervor of coffeehouse culture, how the sharing of newspapers, books, and ideas under vaulted ceilings spurred inventions, reforms, and social movements. In hushed corners and candlelit nooks, seeds of modern thought found fertile ground, while the steady hum of conversation offered solace to minds seeking connection beyond daily toil. Glide past shop windows on Regent Street where mannequins wear the latest Victorian fashions, voluminous crinolines in muted pastels, tightly buttoned bodices adorned with jet beads, men's frock coats cut with crisp lapels. The glass reflects gaslight flicker, giving each outfit an ethereal glow. A seamstress pauses at her counter, fitting a bustle under a silk gown, her nimble fingers guiding needles with whisper-soft precision. Behind the polished facade of high fashion, a web of home-based dressmakers and cloth workers labors in small attic rooms for meager wages. Here, scraps of fabric accumulate, velvet offcuts become doll clothes, lace trimmings stitch onto shawls for market sale, and leftover buttons thread into ornate trim for upcycled coats. The steady click of sewing machines drifts through open windows, a gentle reminder that every elegant garment begins with humble beginnings. This chapter examines how fashion shaped identity and industry, from bespoke tailors in Mayfair's townhouses to pieceworkers in Bethnal Green, each stitch connecting disparate worlds. We trace the journey of cotton from distant colonies to London workshops, the rise of department stores offering credit, and the subtle interplay of class signaled by a well-placed ribbon or a polished top hat. At dawn on the Thames's foreshore stands a young sailor, last in line to board a steam packet bound for India. His chestnut coat is crisp, his bag slung over one shoulder, and in his eyes dances the promise of distant harbors. Behind him, burly stevedores heave crates of tea and spices onto the deck. The air crackles with anticipation and the tang of brine. As the vessel pulls away, you can almost hear the whisper of waves against its hull, a lullaby of departure. The ship's bow rises and falls with the river's pulse, carrying passengers and cargo toward the open sea. In the evenings, stories drift from the deck, tales of monsoon rains, coral reefs, and exotic ports where palm fronds stir like silent sentinels. This chapter follows both those who left and those who stayed, families waving handkerchiefs on the embankment, uncertain tears glinting in their eyes, and the sailors who returned months later, pockets lined with coins, voices thick with accent, arms full of gifts. In their journeys, we glimpse Victorian London's reach across oceans and the bittersweet bonds of departure and homecoming. As you rest, let the city's many voices, once distinct and bustling, mingle into a singular, soothing hum. Imagine standing on a high balcony as the first pale tendrils of dawn brush the horizon, gilding rooftops with the promise of light. Below, streets still wear the quiet brocade of last night's fog, the cobblestones glistening like scattered jewels. In this moment, all that remains is the gentle echo of those who came before, the factory whistle now a muted memory, the ballad singer's refrain a soft wind in your mind, the creak of a ship's gangplank tinged with hope. Recall the mother in Flower and Dean Street, kneeling by a single flickering candle, her whisper a prayer lacing through the smoke, "May tomorrow bring us bread and peace." Remember the seamstress in Bermondsey, her nimble fingers dancing across silver thread as she stitched dreams into a silk gown. Picture the water inspector tracing lime along a gutter's edge, each grain a step toward health and dignity. Envision the school teacher at Great Ailey Street, her voice calm as she guided weary children through their first ABCs, eyes shining with belief in each young life. Above all, bring to mind the 3 generations of the Ormond family gathered around their humble table, Grandmother Bridget's soft recounting of Ireland's emerald fields, Mary's steady perseverance through phosphorus-laden air, and Edward's bright-eyed wonder at letters that promised worlds yet uncharted. Their laughter and tears form the thread that stitches together every tale we've shared, binding tenements to townhouses, rookeries to lecture halls, and riverbanks to distant seas. In the hush of this shared reflection, feel the subtle cadence of London's heartbeat, a slow, unhurried pulse that travels through every brick, every wharf, every music hall and mission. It is a rhythm born of countless footsteps, the hobnailed boots of policemen, the worn slippers of laundresses, the sailors' rough-soled deck shoes. Each step, in its own time, shaped the city's contours and carved its stories into memory. Allow your senses one final journey through this world. Sight: the smoky orange glow of factory windows at dusk, the fragile lace curtains of a Mayfair drawing room swaying in a warm breeze, golden gaslight halos bobbing along deserted streets. Sound: the distant thunk of a shoemaker's last, the soft rustle of laundry on a shared line, a child's giggle echoing across a schoolyard before fading into the hush. Smell: the earthy musk of clay from an excavation pit, the tang of brine on river mist, the sweetness of coal smoke mingled with wild mustard by an open grave. Touch: the cool weight of a tin cup in a pauper's hand, the gentle yield of a damask cushion in a townhouse parlor, the rough warmth of a well-worn quilt at bedtime. Taste: the thinning pea soup that warmed hungry workers, a rare teaspoon of preserved berry jam on Christmas morning, the bitter sweetness of strong coffee kindling late-night arguments in a coffee house. In the overlap of these impressions, find a place of calm, a quiet courtyard where rose petals drift across cobbles, a riverbank at dawn where water laps in soothing rhythm, a dim attic where the hum of a sewing machine becomes a lullaby. Picture yourself there now, wrapped in the gentle cloak of history's embrace, no longer an observer but a quiet participant in the ongoing story of human perseverance. As your breathing deepens and your eyelids grow heavy, let go of every burden carried by those who walked these streets so long ago. Their struggles, though vast, give way to your renewal. Let their hopes, the faint glow of each gas lamp, the promise in every letter learned by candlelight, light your path into sleep. May you awaken refreshed, carrying forward the compassion, resilience, and gentle wisdom of a city that has known both hardship and grace. Good night, and may your dreams wander through mist-wreathed alleys and sunlit terraces alike, guided by the soft murmur of London's timeless lullaby.